Okay, good afternoon. We're at the DC Public Library today. It's October 16th, 2021, and we're thrilled to have you join us. Could you tell us your name?
Miu Eng.
And today, could you tell us what's going on?
We're having a poster event. Back in 1981, I created this poster called A People Emerging for the Asian Pacific American Heritage Week. And I guess I participated in a talk early this year, and so I showed some of my artwork. And we thought it might be a good idea to try to recreate this poster with Dear Chinatown.
That's fantastic. And so you're having an exhibit here along with the poster making?
Yeah, on the truck.
That's fantastic. One of the obviously your posters have been an inspiration. How long have you been doing these posters?
Well, I did them 1981, 82, and 83. So I did it for 3 years, and it's really more of a pro bono project. And I remember one of I think Franken Chow had financed the project. And so I came up with the artwork, the slogan, I had it printed, and then he would take some copies, I'll take some copies, and whatever I can sell is my payment for my work. And you know, after 3 or 4 years, I thought, I think I got too busy with life, and I didn't do it afterwards. So, but now 40 years later, looking back, it's like, hey, this is not bad, you know?
What were some of your slogans that you used?
The first one was A People Emerging, and that's the poster we're doing today. And it's based on the word person in Chinese. So it's a calligraphy on that character, and it's just a grouping of it, and it has a lot of motion, so you get a sense of the people are like coming out. And back in 1981, I thought, yeah, you know, we now have more of a voice. So, and now 40 years later, I'm thinking it's still relevant, you know, that we need to speak up. And another slogan was Strangers No More. And the whole artwork is all these profiles, except for the last row is all we're looking at you. And it's sort of like, I think when people look at Asian Americans, they don't really see them. You know, so as a profile, you're not really actually looking at a person. So when the last row, when they come and look directly at you, it's like, hey, you know, I'm here. Another one was working together. And it's basically a lot of hands sort of combining graphics of the hand, and sort of the whole visual is, they form kind of like a kimono, but it's hands working together. And the whole idea of like, we need to sort of come together and, you know, and work together. And I think the last one was preservation and progress. So I don't have that one with me, but it's almost like color bars and tiny little stars that make up the word preservation. And then these stars kind of come down and create the word progress. So it's sort of like, you know, if you really persevere, you'll make some progress. So, but visually, I thought the idea was good, but visually, in the end, I wasn't that happy with the visual. But I was working with 2 colors, so I have my limitations. Yeah, back in 1982, 83, that's before computers. So everything is like cut and paste. And I'm like cutting those little stars and creating the words. So it was work.
Could you tell us a little about your background and your connection to Chinatown in DC?
My family immigrated to the US in 1967, and we were able to do that because President Johnson signed a new bill so that all Chinese Americans can now immigrate back to the US. My grandfather's been here for like 50 years at that time. So we live in Chinatown, 9th New York Avenue. And so, we used to come, there used to be a library down the road from me called Carnegie Library. And that was my home away from home, like reading all the children's sections, from Curious George to Little House on the Prairie. And so growing up in Chinatown, going to school in DC, and then eventually ended up at GW, where I studied graphic design. But now I'm in Arlington. I fled the city.
And what drew you to the arts?
It's one of those things where when you have nothing, like musical instruments, you need to have money to buy the instrument. Sports, you need to have the sports equipment. But with art, if you have a pen and paper, you can create whatever. So it really was more just having material easily accessible, not having other distractions, and really sort of, as a child, being sort of living more in my head than, not many friends. So it's really kind of a lonely child's way of entertaining oneself. So
there's a photo on the exhibit today of you in high school. Do you remember that, or your experience in high school? Or?
High school it was used to be called Western High School. It's now Duke Ellington, and it was like a 30-minute bus ride from Chinatown, to Upper Georgetown. I think personally, high school was difficult for me because, again, it's sort of that, shy child and not really making many friends. So I did have some teachers there that were really inspiring. So that made a difference.
And what were some of those sources of inspiration, both from your teachers or other areas?
I think it's more a matter of like encouragement, and non-judgment. And I think that is really important. You just try, and sometimes it's good, sometimes not so good.
And so how did they know to reach out to you to do the posters in the early 80s?
I have studied graphic design in school, and I was involved with a community newsletter called Eastern Wind. So I volunteered to do some drawings and that sort of thing. I was terrible drawing, very terrible, but I didn't know it at the time. So, good job. So, like, what you don't know doesn't hurt you, kind of thing. Had I known how bad it was, I would have stopped. But then I discovered graphic design, you don't have to know how to draw, or you don't have to be a good illustrator, because it's really more of taking an idea and then trying to create a visual that's engaging and get the message across. And I think I found the posters did do that. And I think, I can't remember the first time it was Asian Pacific American Heritage Week. It must have been like a late 70s, early 90s. So the time was still like a new thing. So we thought, oh, let's do a poster. I said, oh, I volunteer. I was game.
So I'm going to take you back to that moment. How did you find community then as an Asian American in DC, and how and where?
Well, I guess it's the Calvary Baptist Church used to have like youth programs, and there were things happening there. The Chinese Community Church also had activities for the young, for kids. And then the Eastern Wind newsletter was a summer project, and I think it was funded by the DC government. So there was various governmental or community groups that sort of had these activities where if you're interested, you can show up, and volunteer or whatever.
And then you said that at the time you had this feeling that the voice was emerging, and that was essential. What gave you that feeling at the time?
Well, I think having the recognition of Asian Pacific American Heritage Week, and at the time, I think Asian American is still like a new term, so it felt like a step forward, and I think not being a very verbal person, I felt communicating through print or art is sort of like my way of communicating.
And you said that you still think that's relevant today.
I think so.
Could you tell us why you think that?
I mean, as a culture, you are not really encouraged to like speak your mind or speak up. It's always like, let's just go with the flow. And so I think it's very difficult to depart from that cultural upbringing. And I think individually, each person have their own experience, and some will kind of break out of that conformity. And I think it's so much easier to conform, and so. And I think there are opportunities where people can sort of find their own voice, but you never know where it is or when the opportunity will come up. So it's really up to the individual to say, oh yeah, I'm in for this, that sort of thing.
And today, where do you find community as an Asian American? What spaces and groups?
Well, regretfully, I sort of moved out of that space as a young adult because, life happens. You don't have family, kids, jobs. So I did feel sort of myself sort of removed from the Asian community and sort of to pursue my life. But now that it's almost like things sort of come up, go full circle, and I find that the kids are grown, I have a little bit more time, and so I feel like I'm more willing to engage again and see what happens. Yeah.
Okay, what role do you think Chinatown plays in the places like Chinatown play in the Asian American experience?
I don't really know personally because right now DC Chinatown is sort of shrinking and just feels a little bit removed from it. Other than the New Year celebration, or I know there are 1882, the organization try to have like weekly activities at the Chinese Community Church, and I guess the church does bring a lot of people together.
And then when you think of Chinatown today, what comes to mind?
That's a very good question. I just think of how much has changed. I mean, growing up, that was like my neighborhood. That and like going beyond Chinatown, like the Smithsonian is like, you know, just up the road. So there's a lot of venues where one can sort of explore the city. And I found that within Chinatown itself, it's I don't really can't think of anything right now that I'm like involved with. But I know as a kid there was a lot happening, and a lot more people in the neighborhood growing up. A bunch of children riding the bike, you know, just walking up the street to the coffee shop. So all that's sort of not here anymore. It's now Starbucks, you know. But I think it's more like coming back to Chinatown. It just kind of bring back like some old memories, nostalgia.
Where would you like things to be in the future moving forward with respect to Chinatown?
I think if people don't live in the community, it's very difficult to have that community. You know, if you're only like coming in for dim sum or a festival, then it is kind of, it's almost like going to the museum. You know, you go once or twice a year and that's it. You don't really think about a day-to-day thing. So as long as people are not living in the community, that's part of the issue.
It reminds me of your poster of preservation in progress. In retrospect, what do you think of those two terms working together, preservation and progress, as it relates?
Whoa, look at that wind. There goes the posters. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh no, they spilled some ink.
Wow.
That was a gust.
That was a gust. The wind tunnel.
Yeah, we are in the wind tunnel.
Well, let's see. Do you want to continue, or do you want to see if the things need to be rescued?
Hey, they got it under control.
Okay. Okay. Last question was about progress and preservation.
Right.
And I guess in that sense, maybe thinking about the spaces of Asian American community, and not necessarily just about Chinatown, but how to maintain that connection between progress and preservation.
Well, I think perseverance itself is sort of like just, you know, like don't stop. You know, that's the whole idea. It's just like no matter how small the progress, you are just making small steps, and eventually there will be progress. And I think there is, you know, progress in the Asian community because there are more elected officials. People are more involved. The new generation, they are more politically aware. So yeah, I mean, progress is there. Sometimes you just have to like look for it.
What about the preservation side?
Perseverance itself. Perseverance.
Oh, did I get it wrong? I thought you said preservation.
No, perseverance.
Perseverance and progress.
It's a verb.
Okay, I got that wrong.
Perseverance itself is, I mean, I think when we live day to day, I mean, we have to persevere, you know, no matter who we are. Sometimes it's easy to like, oh, that's just too hard. It's like, I know when I have a big project and it's just overwhelming. It's like, I can't even get started. And it's that you just work around the edge. That's how I do it, at least. I work around the edges. I do the easy bits first. So once the easy bits are done, I'm more motivated. I see some kind of activity or progress, and it's almost like it feeds on itself. So the more you do, no matter how little, it gives you encouragement to do more.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and it's been wonderful to be able to share your art.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.